Okay. All right. So we're on our way here. All right. So topic 12 commentary. It's mainly around uh, corporate social responsibility and then going global and going global has really changed in the last 12 months because of the US. It was a absolute growing business, and there was a lot happening on the global scene. And now people are kind of repatriating. They're not looking at working together as much as they did. But that's not to say that it's the end of it. It's just I think it's just a little bit of a noise in the meantime because any economist that says anything about global trading is that this is how you enrich all parties. That's the trading fact. Really, it leverages comparative advantage across the globe, and it's a better thing for better quality of life. For more prosperity, and as long as we do this, in a triple bottom line way. So we're going to cover that piece, and I'll have some comments around that. And there are some questions in test number 3 about the global organization and about corporate social responsibility and being socially responsible. Okay, and we'll go there. Okay, so really we're kind of at the end of this management principles continuum where we're talking about contingency and systems and the humanistic side of managing, that's where we are, and there will be in terms of deliverables 2 more survey if you haven't done them already. So again, the content from topic 3 is not covered in test number 3. However, you still need to do activities 13A and 13B, and I'm going to cover 13A in this particular presentation on topic 12, and 13B is basically showing proof of doing the survey so you can get some bonus marks. So that's what that's all about. Okay, so the test number 3, it's only a one-timer, June the 19th at 7 p.m. It was set up by the registrar, it's basically topics 9, 10, 11, and 12. It's predominantly multiple choice questions. There'll probably be about 40 multiple choice and maybe 10 true and false questions. The duration for the test itself, even though it's shown as 3 hours in the registrar, is about 80 minutes. And again, please get ready with your lockdown browser and webcam because that'll be required for the test. So again, I really haven't pointed out that these webinars are a key resource, for really looking at the commentary presentations to get ready. And you can see that there's going to be 4 chapters of Robbins that are really important that you go through because it really kind of puts the more content around the hints that I'm giving you in terms of what's going to be on test number 3. And again, you go to topic 13 to run the test. It's this link right here that that you click on and you do it. So, and the practice tests are in topic 12, and they're a good idea to do those practice tests because it gives you an idea again of the style of the questions of what's going to be asked. Okay, again, if you're a Chromebook user, and I don't think there are any Chromebook users in this course, but if it is, and it's your first time, beware, get ready for it because the lockdown browser software doesn't relate as well to Chromebooks as any other type of instrument or device that you're working with. So if you have any questions, your best resource is the library. So there, this is here again now in terms of the chapters that you need to cover. In chapter 3 is all around decision making, and I'm going to talk about that. There's a few slides that we're going to cover in this presentation, but sections 3.3 and 3.4 are really important, especially around decision making around social and ethics, social responsibility and ethics. So that's key. And so let's not forget about triple bottom line, because that is the way to manage in the future. Because if we don't care about the people that we're supporting and we're just profit driven, we're not gonna be able to be in business very long. Okay, so I see a lot of you have started participation 12A, and I'm really pleased with all the submissions so far. You followed the template. They look really well, well done and well thought out. And again, this little icon right here about global strategy, it's really to give you a checklist as to what to look for in terms of developing the goals for Tim Hortons, the elaboration of their global strategy. And the thing is too, as AI is your best friend. It'll go out and it'll research, what's going on with Tim Hortons. So that should be easy to be able to set up some goals. And please use the template and reproduce that template as best as you possibly can. I keep on saying, help me, help you. I'm in a better disposition when I see that I can, clearly see what I've asked for, and it's you'll be rewarded for it. So just keep that in mind. So here's the template. People have been using this so far, and they're using it right to the T. So I'm really pleased with that. And I think this will really help serve you. I know, like, I've got years and years of corporate experience in doing corporate planning, business planning, marketing planning, and the thing is that that's where people fall down on the plan itself, is they don't elaborate well enough on the goals. And the whole idea is that you're trying to drive towards execution. And if the goal doesn't have the context, it's not clear, people won't know how to follow it. And chances are it's the people that are out in the field that are executing, and they don't have a link back to whoever created that goal. So you've got to give them the tools, all right? And so KPIs are really important. They have to be very focused on the outcomes, so that I keep on saying this, what gets measured gets done. So the more that you could make this appear to be doable, and give them the information that they need, and then them as part of a learning organization, can adjust, if there's something going on different, you're going to do much better. So I think that's in my experience, that's where the downfall was, in terms of plans that didn't really see all the way through to the execution of the outcomes that they were intended to plan for. All right, so the thing is, though, in the strategic goal, even in the statement, add the date and the day. So like December 31st, 2026 or whatever, so that these clear goals, they're going to unify your team. They're going to unify your leadership. It's going to align resources and the priorities. And it's all about, where the baseline was from X, to what is the desired end state, why and by when. And I think that will really serve you totally well in terms of your success in getting things done as a project manager, or as just a leader in your organization. All right, so there's the template. I've given you an example to go through, but it's all about stating a goal for the person in charge of the goal's execution, such that it's understood long after you created it. I mean, that's the key message of this piece. The next one is that I've used this this particular way to kind of rank issues, and it's a little bit different. Mine is I actually have another evaluation criteria of, is it doable kind of thing, how doable. But I didn't want to put that in to confuse people. But I've used this in planning sessions many, many years. And I'll tell you, when we've gotten to the actual issues that the plan was going to work on, doing this ranking got us about 95% of it there. And then it's the fine discussion after that fine tunes it. So it's what I'm saying is this is tried and true, this method. So if you learn how to do this and you're ranking your problems, what you're going to do is, because of scarce resources, right, you're going to focus on those those really important goals. And that's along this Franklin Institute 4DX. If ever you've looked it up, it will really, it's those really important goals that you'll be able to do. This is the way to do it. And the thing is that you rank these from 1 to 5 on each of these categories, and you total it, and the one with the highest score is your top issue. Okay, so here's the example, I'm hoping that you will follow this. For the rest of you who haven't done it yet, but to date, everyone has followed this template, and it's really worked out well for them. Okay, the team exercise. So this is in 13A, and if you check slides, and I added a slide, so the message on the earlier revision of topic 12 says slides 80 to 86, but it's really slides 79 to 85. And those are the slides that you go through to be able to fill this out, all right? So you don't have to go anywhere else for research yet, but if you choose to, that's okay too. And again, it's brief reason for each selection. Why does it matter? Really, that's what we're looking for. And why do I ask that all the time? It's because I want you to start, or I want you to always, do critical thinking. It really gives it the essence of, okay, why is this important? And then there's no secret. If you ever heard of Simon Sinek, he talks about the power of why, and people in management that will elaborate on the why are always better followed. They're better. They can better engage people because people now understand. That famous FM station. WIIFM. What's in it for me and what's in it for the organization to be able to get things done. So that's why I'm asking you for these particular things. Now on 13B. Basically, what I'm asking you to do there is just to show me that you've done the surveys. So what you need to do is just take a screenshot of each survey that you completed that will give me an idea of what you've done. If you've got a different way of doing that, if you can go to your scorecard and show me that you've done them that way, if that's easier to do, by all means, go ahead. But what I'm looking for is a series of screenshots, if that's the way that you want to do it, on one PDF to show me that, hey, you will get the 3 bonus points for doing all these surveys. All right. Again, today I'll ask you to click on the link and then find this link really in topic 12. Not you can't. This is a picture on this slide, so it won't work. There's a link right here. So if you clicked on this link, you get right to the survey. And really what it's going to do is it's going to give me a sense of, hey, did you learn something from where you were? You did your assignment 1, and that was your baseline on where you were on your management capabilities and the sense of who you were in terms of being a manager. And then has this course changed your approach or given you more time to reflect and understand what maybe you need to do, right, to become a better manager or a better subject matter expert that will be a leader in some field. Okay, again, assignment number 4, and I'm going to cover that again. And it's due on hang on here. Yeah, so it's due on the 16th, and that's today, right? So and the assignment number 5 is due as well. Okay, so here's the 2 surveys that you have to get done, and hopefully you've done these surveys to be able to do a better job on assignment number 5. And now I'm going to get into the course content for topic 12. And what this is about is, the first thing is about decision making. And what I'm asking you here to consider, right, and I only wish that I would have done this a long time ago, is adopt a decision-making process for yourself. What works for you? There's a gazillion out there on the internet, but what works for you? And the whole idea is that if you can internalize that decision-making process, so it's second nature. So when you see a problem, you automatically can put out the steps as to how you're going to solve that problem. That will get you a long way into solving that problem with the right kind of sense of what you need to do in terms of clarity, in terms of being consistent, and making these informed choices, right? Because I go back to economics. We're living in a world that has scarce resources. So it's all about, in life, in business, all about making the best choice. All right. And so you'll get more efficient over it. It'll align your goals and your actions. You'll get a clear path to, achieve your own career milestones, and it'll sharpen your focus, and it reduces that uncertainty. And the whole idea again, if you ask better questions, you get better answers. It's that simple. All right. So if your decision-making process allows you to ask more effective questions, you're going to get much better results in getting to the choices that you need to do. So this is, I just put this in today because I thought, what would be one of the most effective rudimentary decision framework? It's not on the test or anything else, but I wanted to kind of identify this OODA loop, where you observe, you orient, you decide, and you act. And the thing is that this one is really clear, and it might be one that you may want to adopt. So it reduces the overwhelming. Sometimes you get overwhelmed with that problem. It speeds up your clarity. It works at any scale, and you could use this in life or in business. And you could see that, that it's used in business strategy, military planning, crisis management. It's the Swiss Army knife of decision frameworks, and it's really easy to use. And you can look it up as well. But here's, in this presentation, if you keep this presentation in your files, you'll be able to go back to it. How do they use it in business? How do you use it in personal life? And here's some references. So you can go in and find out, what was done and how effective they were. So how strategists really think, tapping this power of the OODA loop. All right. So that's just for, your benefit. And then in terms of chapter 3 and decision making, again, 3.3 and 3.4 are the key ones that, are going to give you more information about, test questions and how to deal with that. And here's sort of the decision-making process, the approach. You identify that problem. Einstein says, if he had to solve a problem, he would spend 95% of the time on identifying the problem and 5%, with the solution. And that's a key thing, that the mantra is, identifying the problem as understood, is 90% there and getting to the solution. But the whole idea is you identify the decision criteria, and then, we went through, how to rank a weighted decision criteria. Some criteria are more important than others, and to understand that. And then what I learned in total quality management is that you should have at least 3 alternatives, to evaluate. We're not really good at conceptualizing, but we're really good as human beings to compare. And what's normally happened in my experience is, with 3 alternatives, normally in the majority of the cases that, I would work with teams and whatever, we would take the best out of 2 to 3 of those alternatives and come up with the 4th alternative that really kind of had a better solution for better choices. But the thing is, you should have, by TQM standards, at least, 3 alternatives that you look at. And that's when you analyze those alternatives, you select an alternative, you implement it, but again, you evaluate the decision effectiveness of that. And that's where you learn. If you go through and, we used to use the term as post-mortem, and tell us, we would go through our results and say, okay, what worked and what didn't work. And that really helped us in terms of solving, future problems, because we get to know what our weaknesses were, or what our misunderstandings were. And this is a proven path to success. So that's where you need to go. All right, group 4 assignments, in case somebody didn't start that already, it's a good idea to take a look, what you're going to need to know for in assignment number 5, so that if you know that, then when you're doing group 4, you'll be able to do better in looking at assignment number 5. So again, on group number 4, assignment, you don't answer all 29 questions. You only answer the number of questions that will make up at least 100 and a little over. All right. So I've given you an example here in the next piece. Here's an example one. Is that these were the questions that were chosen, and no, it turns out that it was going to be 100 marks. If you total this up, and the thing is that I would then mark it out of 100, 100. Example two, you could pick these particular questions, and that would total 106. So I would mark this out of 106. And then again, example three, 104, I would mark it out of 104. All right, so that's the way it would work. But what I'm emphasizing is, again, help me help you. Show me a table of contents in that assignment. And what to do is show me which questions that you chose, and keep to the number of the question. Don't start renumbering those questions. They need to correlate to your answers. So if it was question 14, A, B, and C, that's what it's on there, even if it was the first question that you answered. All right, and again. I'm gonna take some marks off if I don't see that, but if you help me, it really puts me in a better appreciation of what you've done, and gives me a good feeling about what you've addressed. And if it's organized and it has subtitles, it makes it much easier for me to say, yes, they got to that point. All right. Okay. So yeah, this is what the total of content table of contents should look like. And you can see here, question 2 was selected. That was 6 points. And I want to see I want to see that total in the bottom. I don't want to have to add these up myself. All right. Again, keep me in a good mood. Right. So, do the add-on and show me this particular table of contents in that question. And again, you can see that don't be changing the numbers of these questions. So if you've answered question number 8, you number it as question number 8. All right. Okay. Yeah. I say the paper cannot exceed 6 pages. I'm really looking at economy. If you have to go a little bit over and you're not over reaching, then that's fine. But I'm looking more for quality than content, right? Yeah, and that's what I'm doing. And then again, if you're going to use AI, you let me know that you've done that. And here's the thing too, is that if you're going to use AI, don't just use the generic statement of what AI says. Make sure that that's customized to the actual theme of that question. And keep it, in terms of that. Okay. So points are based on knowledge of theory and correct application of the theory. So, if you're going to talk about a theory, whose theory is it? What is the theory? And then why does it matter, kind of thing. Okay. And just this one here is, for the Amazon Balanced Scorecard, use the template. If you do not use the template, then you will lose marks. I'll tell you right now. And the thing is too, is that try to make it visually decipherable. I've seen some templates that were filled out correctly, but I got the whole range inside of an Excel spreadsheet, and it's really hard to increase the size of it when I'm marking it. So have a look at what they look like, before you upload them to me. Okay, so now we're getting into the content of topic 12, and the contingency approach, the management. The best approach is dependent on the company's internal and external needs. So that's one thing. Leadership must be relevant at all times, and that's the key thing to know about. All right, so. In this other piece now, there's not going to be anything on the test about Callio and Wesley, but a lot of the issues in Canada are or many of the issues are centered, around, First People. And these people here seem to be one of the better types of leaders to really keep it within context of, how to take a look at issues. So they're a really a good source to be able to, look at identity and culture and the leadership and the accountability and stewardship and those kind of things. So this is, this comes right out of your slide deck in topic 12 in Blackboard. And why is it so important? Well, it's all about revitalizing traditional cultural principles. It's about building internal capacity. And, building internal capacity, we saw in the, balanced scorecard, right? I mean, that's, growth and learning, right? That's what that's all about. Effective leadership, community needs and aspirations, and economic opportunities. So if you're looking at anything that's related, especially these large projects, oil and gas or whatever, they're always, coming across indigenous communities. And this would serve you well to be able to know about this, when you're working on those types of programs. So here's a framework that I built. Craigtel is my small company here, and it kind of puts everything into perspective around a strategic framework. So you do the standard, the vision, the mission, the goals, the objectives. But what's really key, and that's why we kind of focused on this a lot, in the former topics, it's all about what are you providing to the customer in terms of value proposition, and then how are you going to bring that to market? What's the strategy, and how are you going to deal with the competition? And you need the business model to support that. And one key thing that you should remember, and this is why I focus so much on goals, is that these goals, they align with the strategy. This is how you execute on a strategy, is primarily through the goals that you set up to be able to do that. So that's absolutely key. So if your strategy is right, and your business model is relevant to be able to build competitive advantage, then it's all about execution of the value proposition, right? And again, through that value proposition, we talked about the ideal customer, which was it's the segment of that you're really targeting that's going to be most profitable and it's going to do the best for you. And inside that ideal customer segment is this buyer persona that that you developed in one of the topics. And so this all comes together. And if you understand the value proposition, there's Michael Tracy and Fred Wiersman talk about the value disciplines. How do you bring value? Right from the start of your value proposition, what are you doing? You're focusing on one of these key areas and then backing up the other two to be competitive. And that really is the seed of your strategy. So, you got to understand that as well. Okay. So why strategic goals? Well, they align with corporate strategy, right? They're actionable priorities. And what you're doing basically for the goals is you're chunking down the vision. That's what you're doing. You're taking chunks, they're focus areas that you create goals to execute on, right? And the thing is that when it comes to getting things done, it can't be overwhelming, and that's why you chunk down. You should always do that, and that's why you will chunk down on a goal into objectives as well, right? And the thing then is that you can ensure that all the departments in the team focus on the shared outcomes. And what I found as well is that you need that cascading down, from the holding company into subsidiaries, into their various businesses. And if you don't coordinate that, you can actually have competing goals across functions. You can have competing goals across subsidiaries. And you don't get that if you really take a look at how to make this a shared approach into a shared from a shared vision. Okay, so again, I talked about this a little earlier. This is really to give you a checklist on what to look for when you're looking at the key areas that Tim Hortons should go internationally. And again, too, this is a good platform for looking at the Amazon questions in assignment number 4 as well. All right. So again, we talked about that. We talked about that. We talked about that. And just again, this I put a link in one of these topic commentary presentations on KPIs, and again, if you I think if you just Google KPI and Oracle, you'll get that. You can find that presentation on your own on the internet. But if you really understand, the key criteria of a KPI, you're not going to write this down every time that you're doing a KPI, but it'll really get you to the proper KPI, right? There's nothing worse than having a measurement that really doesn't relate, to really understanding how well you're doing in terms of the target. If it can't tell you that, well, then you can't do anything about it. And again, don't forget about leading and lagging indicators. The leading indicators will give you a better idea to foresee what could happen and make changes that are less expensive as you're going along. And then the lagging indicators, it's all about really establishing trends, that you have a reasonable assessment of, hey, those trends will continue. And that, again, will give you an idea as like, if this is going the way it's going, we're going to be out of business in 12 months. I mean, that speaks very highly. All right. So those are the kind of things that you need to keep in mind when you're putting together the KPIs. Talked about this one. We talked about that. So now let's just talk about, the latest trade shocks affecting global trading. We're into a whole new ball game, in the last 15 months, with what has happened with tariffs and the U.S. It affects the whole world order on global trading, and the better that you could understand that even in your, even if you're working in a small company, if you're getting your resources from a supply chain, you better really understand what's the stability around that supply chain so you can stay in business, right? So there's ripple effects. All these policies are reshaping trade relationships. And one thing to start tracking is you take a look at what Mark Carney has done for Canada. Like, I think he's signed up, I think it's like 11 new trade arrangements with some 21 countries, relating to a population of 1.5 billion. So, Canada's on the cusp of really kind of growing, and that will give you a good idea of where you're going to be in terms of that, the effects of that, whether you're working in government or in private industry, or you're running your own business. All right. So, I'm not going to go into this, but, these trade shocks, you should be aware of them. But let's just look at what Carney says, all right? What one can't do at this point in rapidly shifting world order is to rely on one set of institutions, one grouping, one country to provide the answers. You have to know what you want, what you need, how you serve your citizens, and then go out and get it, right? So he and the government are on, they're on a mission right now, and there's going to be a lot of changes in Canada. So get ready for that. So let's talk about going global, right? So why do organizations go global? Well, sometimes it's just reactive, right? So okay, so you're let's say you're a tomato paste producer, all right, in Canada, and you've been doing well for the last 20 years, and it's going on the shelf. But lo and behold, now that there's more of a free trade agreement with Europe, there's 5 other labels of tomato paste on that shelf that are eating your lunch, right? So that's competitive pressure. So maybe you need to figure out, maybe you should be going global to find out, one is, what are these competitors like in their own turf, and what are their strengths and weaknesses? what can I learn that I can bring back to my own best practices from technology or the people or process or whatever. So the reactive regions, competitive pressure, sometimes overcapacity. Well, maybe I've got capacity to produce 10 tons of tomato paste a year, but I'm only selling 6. Well, that means my average cost, for those 6 tons is a lot higher than if I exported that other 4 of that other 40% of production, and I can get my unit cost down. Or things are declining, and so you want to find other markets and other reasons. So those are the reactive reasons. But proactive, well, you want to exploit the factor cost differences across countries. Maybe you have this absolute unique product that you could sell anywhere. So why not go out and serve the world? You have the technological advantage. You have economies of scale. And if you take a look at where China is now in terms of producing EVs, electric vehicles, I mean, they have the best economies of scale in the world. So where do you think they're going to be in the next 10 years when it comes to electric vehicle sales, globally, right? Maybe you have exclusive information. Those are kind of the good things. So again, why did they globalize? Expand your global market share, restructure the value chain on a global scale. It's the ultimate goal sometimes. And again, some products that are new are born to go global. And because of the propensity of the product, the advantages, and that's what people do. They just right off the bat, they're on the internet and they're selling globally, right? So those are the kind of things that that really drives you to go global or not. And what do you face? Well, what are the market size? What are the complexity of the foreign markets? What are the buyers like? What are the new entrants like? What are the rivalry like? Well, here we're really talking about Michael Porter here, aren't we? In terms of the 5 forces. And then these are all the different types of decisions that you need to consider. The ways to export, understanding, how you're going to do in that industry, both domestically and in foreign ways. Is a company ready for that? Does it have what it needs to be able to go global? What are the marketing issues? What are the legal and political situations? And there's a lot of companies that have gone into foreign countries, and they didn't observe the laws unknowingly and lost. All right. So you got to know the laws. You got to know what you're up against to be able to go in there. And then you got to understand, do you go into a country that has fluctuating currency, where the point is, maybe there's so much inflation that money's not worth anything anymore, and that has a big impact on your finances. And then the sources of financing, are getting more and more widespread than they ever were. 20 years ago, it was just the key, foreign banking institutions that really control the global market. Not in today's world. There's many, many options out there. So those are all the decisions, that you have to make to do that. And if you look at how they all come together, well, you organize for the global project. You select the best market to enter. You determine what level of involvement. And what that means is maybe how much investment, are you going to work towards, through agents, are you going to partner? And then how are you going to get paid? And this is where, Canada's BDC really helps young companies go in, because they can assure payments in some ways, so that there's a lot of companies that go in big and then don't get the payment from a foreign country and then go broke. So you got to know about those things. And then the absolute etiquette of global business in terms of understanding national culture and norms, and etiquette for that matter, and understand how different nations or different national cultures make decisions differently and have different decision structures. Some, do it by the elders in the family. Others do it by just straight, economics transactioning, like the U.S. and Australia, and then come up with an export plan. So that's the piece. So now we're getting into, some highlighting and understand that, understanding what multinationals are. You can see the gold arrow here. That's a key piece around, what could be on the test, and understand that there's ways of doing a global strategy. So there's the international piece. So you're using existing capabilities to expand into foreign markets. There's the global piece. Like Apple, they see, they 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 see the world as, hey, that their product is in demand, and they set the standard for their product. So that's the global piece. The transnational, that's specialized facilities, and it's all about, you see, there's the yin and the yang. One is, to be able to be responsive to the market, and the other one is to standardize the managed cost. And you're always, working that piece, because in some nations you have to be totally responsive just to get into the market. But yet, if you don't standardize, then your costs are going up and those kind of things. So those are the kind of things that are dealt with. And then the multinational, several subsidiaries operating as almost standalone businesses in multiple countries. Next slide, I'll show you an example of that. And then international, where you've got something really special, and it's in demand, and you can actually, you could compete with other the similar products, because you've got some key capabilities. All right. So if you take a look at what's important here, remember I told you that this side is, here's a good example of a multinational, Netflix. So it customizes its content offerings to fit local cultures and preferences in each country it operates. So it's really on the, on the flexibility side, the responsiveness. All right. Whereas Apple, it emphasizes efficiency and standardization, because it knows that its product's in demand, and it's offering largely the same product worldwide, but with minimum local adaptation. So that's kind of the range of the market itself, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But how do you go global? And I'm gonna say this a few times. You walk before you run, and the whole idea is that when you shouldn't just decide that you're going to go global. You should be working in your own market and really uplifting your internal capacity. Your to be able to be a force to begin with. All right, and that way, you may have a minimal investment in going global, maybe just exporting through an agent kind of thing. And the whole idea is that not only do you go global to sell, but you go global to source, right? If you take a look at these battery companies, they've got assets nailed down in terms of lithium, those kind of things, all right? And so this is sort of a continuum where you start from, maybe you're just finding parts, globally, to be able to, so you're importing to be able to build your local business. And then in this is less of an investment where you can license and franchise, because then you don't have to build a building somewhere in another country, and then down to strategic alliances, a joint venture, and then actually having a foreign subsidiary. And I'm going to be explaining that piece as well. Okay, so again, so it's global sourcing to exporting, and importing. Those are three main, approaches, and some people are doing, or some organizations are doing it all. Okay, so you start with, on the domestic side, and you understand, how competitive you are even in your own market. And then you may get into a pre-export stage. And what that means in pre-export is that you don't even try to sell your product yourself. You'll find an agent, sometimes that's an importer in a foreign country, or an agent that's an exporter in your own country, to be able to do that for you. And all you're doing then is you're basically selling that product to your agent, and then the agent is getting it to market. And then as you learn, so then you might say, oh, well, you know what? Maybe we can start um, storing our product in another country and then have an agent buy it from there. And then you get to learn the market, and then at some point in time, you have active involvement. We're saying, no, you know what? We're at the point now where we can have our own sales teams and start selling, exporting into, particular country. And then the next one is, hey, let's build a manufacturing operation, that's committed involvement. Okay, so here it is, you gotta walk before you run. And so this is sort of the path that you go, and you can see there's a golden key here and some highlighting. So you start from exporting, and then you could then look at licensing. In licensing, you still don't have to build anything foreign, or then you can start franchising, and then going up as a strategic alliance. And there's different ways of carrying out a strategic alliance, and I'll get into that. It could be non-equity or equity based. There's some contractual agreements, there's some cross shareholdings, those kind of things. And then a joint venture, really is where you partner, with it could be a 50-50 arrangement with another company in that particular country that you want to export to, and they have some inroads to the government and to the regulations and to a customer base, so it makes it easy for you to be able to get your technology there and get it going. Or you go all in and you own a wholly owned subsidiary, and so you could do that by buying a company outright. Say in Germany, you buy a gear manufacturing company outright, and then you start selling gears in Germany and then anywhere else in the world. Or you decide, hey, I'm going to buy some land and I'm going to build a manufacturing facility. That's what they call a greenfield, right? So that's the continuum, all right, of going through. And again, so what it is that maybe I could show this in the other one here. Okay, no, I can't yet. All right, so what you're doing then is that as you're doing that, you're upping your risk, but you're upping your control, right? And that's what people choose. This one here is just for information. You can see there's different paths to take. In terms of, you start with the domestic business. You have other firms handling your external contacts. Up until the point where your internal versus external handling of foreign operations. This one here is that degree of, so this is similarity. So in Canada, the first export piece would likely be, Australia or the US. Why? Well, similar business protocol, similar culture, those kind of things. And then to the point where, as you gain experience, then you could sell in Asia or whatever. All right. Okay, so that's there's 4 pieces to be able to take a look at. So let's just go back to this. So here's a little bit more information. So for a global strategy, Coca-Cola, they have a consistent brand product worldwide, emphasizing efficiency and cost leadership. They don't change the secret recipe here, right? On the transnational, Unilever, they're Unilever does cleaning products and everything else, and they adapt its product to the local markets while leveraging global efficiencies. And then another one is Shopify. All right, they're a big area in transnational. They're right across and the world. So it allows Shopify to balance global integration and local responsiveness that I talked about. Then the multinational strategy, well, that's Walmart. They operate independently in various countries. And then the international strategy, well, Harley-Davidson is the key example here, for exports motorcycles without significant changes, because they're not only selling a motorcycle, they're they're selling a mindset, a cultural, it's a cultural icon, so it's appealing to global customers seeking, American authenticity. So that's the way it is. Okay, so Porter came up with the five forces, and now he's modified that and he's created the diamond model of competitive advantage, right? And so what you take a look at is, these are the key elements, the chance, the firm strategy and structure and rivalry, factor conditions, demand conditions, and the related supporting industries, and then government. And they all play a really big part, especially like related supporting industries. If you're gonna, if you're gonna have a car manufacturing operation in Ontario, well, you better have a lot of parts suppliers making parts or accessing, or available to support that. That's what the related supporting industries is. If you're gonna do precision machining in Germany, well, you better have a lot of precision type industries that have the capability and the trained the trained people that are available for that and all those things. And again, on the demand conditions, well, even the size of your own domestic market really gives you a sense of, can you stay in business, and then based on that, can you anticipate customer needs in other locations. So this is a little more on that. You see that there's not too much highlighting, but it's a really good model to understand. All right. And then here's how it all comes together. All right. And I think these are pretty explanatory. So I won't kind of go through these in detail, but understand, like here, I talked about related supporting industries. These suppliers are themselves globally competitive sub-industries, that will support the success of the main industry that wants to move ahead. Okay, all right, we're into some golden keys here. So in terms of international market development strategy, there's, you can start off with, you're in your own market, all right, and you're producing your own products, all right? You're producing your own products. But then, it's easier to kind of, go this way, all right? So, you've got your own market, you've got market penetration, you've got brand awareness. So what you can do now is you can start creating newer products. And you can see these two stars here. I mean, this is the most productive and profitable way to kind of move ahead, right? Now, when you start, going this way, you're in existing markets, and then you want to go into new markets, you're a whole new ball game. There's so many unknowns, and there's so many risks and threats that are out there, all right? And then, if you go, in here, you're not only in a new market, you're diversifying, and there's just enough, there's more uncertainty and more ways that things could go wrong. But this particular matrix has been around for ages. All right, so it's your standard 2x2 markets and product strategy matrix in marketing. Okay, so common market entry modes, we're going to talk about them. There's exporting, there's licensing, strategic alliances, greenfield investments. I think I kind of talked a little bit about that, and mergers and acquisitions. All right, so you go in and you buy something. Okay, so here it kind of puts it in. Which strategy do you pick? You might you might say, well, I'm going to do some direct exporting, or maybe I'm going to start here and I'm going to have an agent, so I'm going to do indirect exporting. I'm going to sell to a local agent, and they're going to export. Or I'm going to go into another country and venture, joint venture with a local company to be able to, really grasp the market and the the economics of how I can get things done. Or I'm going to create a strategic alliance, or I'm going to actually go in buy a firm or create, build a firm from the bottom up. Okay, so we're looking at that. So again, a little more explanations around, this Bartlett and Goshel's framework. Apple's the most accurately described as transnational piece. So the mantra is you think global but act local. All right, and that way you're kind of getting the right fix of standardization versus responsiveness. All right, and when you can optimize that, well, then you're probably going to be a lot more competitive as you do that. Okay, so I talked about this a lot, so I think I don't need to cover this slide again. Just a little bit about, here's where you want to expand, and so you don't want to put any investment into it, so you can go to licensing or franchising or do some contracting for somebody out there. Like if you take a look at a lot of those resorts, say in the Caribbean or whatever, they're professional. Resort management companies are probably based somewhere in Asia or Europe that just contract to manage that facility for a price, right? That's a non-equity arrangement. They didn't invest in that resort. The resort owners have, but they're they're doing a management contract. Another thing is a turnkey operation, and what that is you take a look at SNC-Lavalin, which is a premier engineering company in Canada. Well, they build power plants, so they might go to a country in Africa and say, "We will build you a power plant." All right, and what we'll do is we will source the materials, we will build it, we will hire, we will train, and then when it's operational and those people are running, we will turn it over to you and give you a bill, for everything plus our profit, right? And that's what a turnkey operation is. They turn it over. Okay, and again, you can see now, if you have a wholly owned subsidiary in a foreign market, okay, you don't, you have full control, right? And nobody else owns it. And then as you kind of go through this ownership continuum, you have less and less control as you go through here. And then as you go up on these pieces, there's a number of partners, and so that it's really hard to drive to your strategic agenda because you have conflicting interests, amongst the partners. Okay, so those are the ranges of approaches. So this is a key slide to really understand. There's importing and exporting, and importing is, hey, you know what? They don't make plastic glasses here that can that are that you don't get microplastics from, and drinking a liquid in there. So you know what? I'm going to buy those from Taiwan, and then I'm going to sell them in Canada. Well, you're importing, right? And then we talked about these other pieces: international licensing, international franchising. So really kind of go through this list to understand what they are. And then again, exporting, that's making products at home and selling abroad. That's, to know that. And then you can see that there's advantages and disadvantages on what you choose to do in terms of how involved that you get. So have a look at that piece. And again, understand the transnational organization. It's an international company in which artificial geographical barriers are eliminated, right? And Nestle, so they have, production facilities that run independently somewhere in Africa, right? To be able to do that. So knowing what it is. So now we're going to talk about just ownership. So you can have a parent company, right, that only owns, 25% of company D. That's an equity investment, right? Versus having a wholly owned subsidiary where they own 100% of that subsidiary. That's wholly owned, right? Versus, an equity piece. So that's how that works. So a foreign subsidy is a company that operates in one country but is partially or wholly owned by a parent company based in another country, right? That's what a foreign subsidiary is, so that you know. And there's types of global organizations. So again, these are the definitions and they keep coming back that are, important to know about. So what is a multinational corporation? We talked about that. What is a transnational corporation? We talked about that. What are global business alliances about? And we talked a little bit about that. What you need to know, though, if you're in if you go into like a regional trade alliance or a global trade alliance, as the distance goes up, your trade drops, in terms of profitability. Why? Well, fuel, right? And transportation on logistics. So that's something that you could know. These are just main to let you know that, if you're looking at, location decisions, there's different things that you need to consider, and you can see that this is iterative. So you take a look at the physical and social factors, and you will change your objectives and strategies as you learn what's going on. And then based on the operation, and the competitive factors, you may structure differently based on, the competition as well. And that's what these pieces are like to go through. But you see that there's no focused, there's no colors on here or underlines or whatever. Okay. So foreign availability, it used to be wage-based competition, right? But that's changing, right? With AI and robotics, technology-based competition now is the focus. And, like 3D printing. So, I could make something in my basement, with a 3D printer that, normally I would have purchased maybe from China, right? Because of, the high economies of scale and low wages, right? So high technology products are available worldwide now from many sources. So that's really what you need to know. Okay. And to know that, in a host country, there's political and legal environments that you really need to understand. What is your political risk? Loss of investing kind of. There's a lot of companies that have lost a lot of money because they didn't really figure this out. And the whole idea is that, you need to have an agent to go into that country and really help you understand what the risks are. And there's different types of risks. Systemic, that's, they're built right into the system. The procedural, there's, distributive, there's catastrophic, there's all kinds of risks that are out there. Okay, I'm just going to skim through these because what I do want to talk about, though, is that there's a difference in law, all right? There's a difference between the civil code of law and the common law, right? And you should understand that. So, the civil law was framed in France, right? And the common law was framed in England. So guess what? So we have a two-part system in Canada because if you go to Quebec, it's civil law that they practice. And everywhere else in Canada, it's common law, because of that. Common law is mainly around, there's, it goes by precedent, all right? Whereas in civil law, it's coded out, so you got to follow the code. And you can see that there's different aspects. So, picking your foreign target has is a lot to do with, what type of legal systems are they in, right? And again, understand too that in an autocratic country, you're under the rule of man. And in a democratic country, you're under the rule of law, and so that it's the rule of law. It's more stable. You could and you got to understand those implications. And the whole idea about the rule of man is that a dictator, you're at the whim of that dictator, or they just change their mind overnight, and the law changes, and then you're out of luck, right? And then knowing the legal environment, where are you going to play in terms of criminal law or civil and commercial law, and those kind of things. So, and one thing to understand as well too is that the less economic freedom there is, the less other freedoms there are, right? And so that you should take a look at the countries that, especially if you're going to be new into that area, where is there much more economic freedom, which means there'll be a lot more stability and predictability around, what your business can do. Not going to talk about that. Just to let you know that there is a competitive index out there, and you can find this all, if if you decide you want to go and do something. Okay. Now I'm going to get into ethics and corporate responsibility, right? And here's, there's a few questions on the test about that. Uh, and what does that surround? That surrounds globalization. There's ethic responsibility, there's social responsibility, sustainability, and that's what we've been talking about, triple bottom line all these time, and the age of technology. So a lot of technological disruption in in your working lifetime. That's going to be, I think, the key issues to drive. And when technology gets ahead of society, that's when you start having problems in terms of ethical responsibility and social responsibility. And it's you're the society is always trying to catch up to the latest developments in technology to make sure that there's no harm, side harm or external disadvantage to people because of commerce going on with the new technology, right? And that's all, if you know anything about economics, there's externalities that you got to worry about. All right. So one thing to understand though, in the triple bottom line, it does cover all these things, right? The planning, the productivity, and the management social impact. But I'll tell you something very key, right? Planning typically leads to higher profits among many other positive outcomes. So planning is key, for higher profits. There's no doubt about that. And then in ethical and social responsibilities, these are all the things that are the main issues in our workplace. Discrimination, harassment, workplace health and safety, whistleblowing, ethical accounting practices, corporate espionage, technology and privacy, nepotism and favoritism, and environmental responsibility. So those are key. So what you should know in terms of ethical systems is these four definitions. All right. What is universalism? All people should uphold certain values. What is egoism? Acceptable behavior is that which maximizes the benefit for the individual. Utilitarianism, the greatest good for the greatest number. And relativism, ethics is defined by the opinions and behaviors of relevant people. Right. So you should know those four terms. Again, you can see that they've been highlighted here. And here's some issues based on that come into place. So, you should read these pieces. But just so you take a look at conflict of interest is one of the higher, issues that come up all the time than abusive behaviors. So you can see where, that is on a continuum. But the thing about all of this, when it comes to, uh, uh, ethical behavior and being good corporate citizen, training has an absolute impact. It's been proven. All right, it's been proven that if you do have training about these things, your organization is likely not to get into trouble. Right, so and you can see the danger sides of unethical behavior, short-term revenues. The emphasis. Failure of establishing a written code of ethics. If you have policies on all these and training related to that, you're going to be in better shape. Okay, so what to know about corporate social responsibility is that there are social obligations that a business firm they engage in and meet economic and legal responsibilities, and then there's social responsiveness, and that's where the firm engages in social actions in response to some popular social need. All right, and that's the crux of it. And again, it all comes down to what goes on amongst all these players, doing the right things in terms of owners, customers, community, suppliers, and workers, and how that affects it. So fair trade, has come into play, and why that drives, the triple bottom line in terms of, the social side and the environmental side. And then, hey, by the way, a business has to make profit to stay in business. So, and this is also known as, it's further expanded. It's not just profit, but it's prosperity. All right. Okay. So one of the drivers is conscious consumerism, and that's one driver of corporate social responsibility. And what conscious consumerism is, people, consumers, customers are getting smarter and more conscious of what the impact is on that. And what they'll do then is that they will source ethical. So there's ethical stocks that you can buy, right? They will drive towards companies who support environmental sustainability or social responsibility. And they will do better business with organizations that are transparent and are accountable, and so they know who they're dealing with. All right. So this has been a big driver, and it's getting more steam as we go along. But here's a key one, say for a test. You got to know the approaches to CSR. So this is another continuum. Yeah, here's the good guys on this side, and here's the bad guys on this side. All right. And so, there's the obstructionist approach. They disregard for social responsibility. So they'll do everything they can, to make profit. And as long as they're not going to jail, they're okay. And then there's the defensive approach, the minimal commitment to social responsibility, so they get by, and and sometimes they might spin, what they're doing is really more than what they are actually doing. And then the accommodative approach, moderate commitment to social responsibility, and then the proactive approach. So I'll show you some examples. So those are the four, areas in that continuum that you should understand. And so what does it mean to be socially responsible? Well, it's reputation. And guess what? Reputation means brand. And if you have a social responsible brand, that's a very strong brand, and it will hold a lot of asset power and selling power, because people then know that, hey, they can trust you, right? You have a good reputation. That means increased business. You've got an approved ability to obtain resources that enhances profitability. So those are the kind of things. So being socially responsible is profitable. So let's look at, those four pieces. All right. So we're looking at the obstructionist stance. Well, corporation takes an obstructive stance, may cross an ethical or legal line, and try to hide it, right? Like such as dumping hazardous materials. So here's something that used to be done in the past. Say a pulp mill, they could only put out 10 parts per million of lead in their effluent. So what would they do? They take a stream of the river and come in and mix it with their effluent so they could get underneath that level. That's an obstructionist stance, all right? It's a way of getting around it and saying, oh, look we're meeting our legal factors, right? The defensive stance, well, you can see where this came from, right? They make profits. They're a more important motive than informing actions in a socially responsive way. And if you take a look at, the cigarette industry, well, there's a lot more people per capita smoking in, say, Africa than there is in North America, all right? And then the accommodation stance, well, they'll cooperate, but they'll exceed the legal minimums, all right? So they're showing that they're doing something. But here, if you want to, find a gold star proactive stance organization in Canada, it's Van City, and it's a community, it's a credit union. And go on their site, you'll see what they do. I mean, they subsidize EVs, they help businesses, they do all kinds of great things, in unprivileged areas in Vancouver and those kind of things. They make social responsibility a priority. And one of the pioneers of social responsibility in Van City, I don't think she's any longer on the board of directors. She's a world known expert on sustainability. I can't remember her name, but I'm sure if you Googled Van City, you'd be able to find out. So, and it pays, all right? Corporate social responsibility pays. Why? Because you're moving these customers up the customer loyalty ladder, And when they see that, your brand is True Blue and you're doing that, they become an advocate for you. They become a champion, right? And they start promoting your business for you, right? And so that's key to know about where corporate social responsibility will take you. And it's all about, being a good ancestor. And and I think that's where we need to start. And if you take a look at a lot of First Nation peoples, not just in North America, but in Australia or whatever, when they made a decision for the tribe, they looked ahead 7 generations to see what the impact would be. That's what being a good ancestor is all about. I don't think that, in North America, corporations look ahead 7 generations to see what kind of impact on the environment they're going to have with the particular technology, right? So again, ethical issues, you know, this is where corporate governance comes in, and responsibility. And the thing is too, is that, there might be looser laws in other countries, but the whole idea is, keep to your corporate values and know what kind of organization you are and have a consistent corporate governance and the responsibility for doing the right things. Okay. Not gonna and then there's different types of corporate governances. There's market-based, that's really where we are, a family-based, you can see that in the Asian countries, bank-based, Korea and Germany, and government affiliated, China and Russia. And it all comes down to transparency and accountability, all right? And how this all came to fruition, this term transparency and accountability is all about this company called Enron back in the late 90s. They were the darling of the stock exchange, but guess what? They put false numbers out into the economic community, so their stock would be trading, it was a darling of 401ks or whatever. And to the point where, they would push their debt into other numbered companies so people wouldn't be able to see, their debt to equity ratio in the right line. And then all of a sudden a whistleblower came on and the whole stack of cards just fell down. The company went bankrupt. All these people were lost their jobs. And a lot of people who had the Enron investment lost all kinds of money towards their 401k, their pension, and the scandal just went. Even their accountants were in on the scheme. At that time they were called Anderson. They actually changed their brand name, because of that scandal, going through. And now they're called Accenture, right? So, and what came out about it, and here's the thing about, when things go sideways, it's the bad people that cause organizations, governments to change the rules to protect everyone. But when they change those rules, it's the good people, that pay the price, for those rules as well. And so what happened was they introduced this Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, to emphasize transparency and accountability, and so that board members were on the hook, legally for what's going on. But what it did was it caused all kinds of expenses for these smaller businesses that didn't have the resources to do the complex accounting that the Sarbanes-Oxley Act called for. So it really was a mess, right? You can see that we moved a lot in terms of intellectual property. The World Trade Organization has really kind of put things in place to do that. China's come a long way, to honor, the intellectual property as well. And I think because of, their prominence in the world today. All right. Again, the EU is the place that are, the leaders. They surpass most of the world in both cultural friendliness and actual implementation of CSR programs. They're helping companies integrate their CSR into their daily business practices. And again, there's things that got passed in the US, but I'm not sure where things are now because, they're kind of, just kind of taking a lot of the regulation out of the way, and there's a lot more, chance for different things that can go on. All right, and that's this is about ethical issues, and this is about this thing came out about the honorable merchant, but there's no room for bribery and corruption in the honorable merchant, right? So that's Arbor Kaufman who started this. Okay, so that's it for for topic 12, for the test number 3. So what I'm going to do then, I'm just going to do a quick review right now. I'm not going to take a break. I'm going to do a quick review of topic 13, the things to look out for. And especially one of the things is, slides number 79 to 85 is how to get 13A participation activity done. And then some other things to know about the technology and where it's going. But I won't get into the detail. All right, so this shouldn't take too long. But I think it's a good sense of knowing where you're at in terms of where artificial intelligence and robotics and these what they call things of the internet, or the Internet of Things, where all these new sensors that are coming out that are causing the need for data, more big data and data centers, and the whole idea of making systems intelligent. So those are the kind of things that are going to happen in your in your career lifetime. So I think they're pretty important. So I'll get started on that. All right. Okay, so here's the information about the test. I covered this all off. I covered off this thing in topic 12, but those are related slides in this presentation, 7985, will really give you a sense of how to figure this out. I covered this 13B. I want you to do the assignments number 6, the post survey, a little bit about the assignments. All I can say about reading the things that you're doing, in terms of homework or whatever, writing is your superpower, and you won't go wrong if you learn how to write, in terms of, I say business eve. Yeah, I business ease it, not in terms of how do you write a great paper, how do you communicate and you get people to do things for you. I mean, that's really the whole piece in business. And covering why it matters is the biggest part of giving people the rationale for why they should be involved. All right, and that could be just so powerful. And I think I probably brought this up before, that when I was running projects at TELUS, and some of them were big money projects, and we needed to go to a board to get approved, get resources. And lo and behold, I learned pretty quick, the people who knew how to communicate and understood the needs of their audience, and sharpened their communication because of that, they got the money and other people didn't. All right, so it's that simple. All right. And the thing to remember about AI, it may not replace you, but someone using it might replace you. And if you take a look at, where that's going, look at, and this is a 2024 prediction. So I'm sure it's even worse than that. By 2030, AI is projected to displace 92 million jobs while creating 170 million new ones. So there's room to be able to understand AI and use it as a tool, to your advantage. All right. So that's really key. And Canada is facing a cost crisis and a productivity problem. I think I've brought this up before. The the productivity is dropping to the point where it's going to start affecting our quality of life, our standard of living, right? And so you should understand that, but you should know, what Carney is all about in terms of where Canada's heading, and really, Carney's talking about a Canadian energy superpower in the world, right? And they've got some pretty brash plans. And to know what those plans are, you might create opportunities for yourself. And in those plans as well are for AI excellence. And so that you're going to see things starting to go here in Canada. And I, for one, is very encouraged on what I've been reading and what I've been seeing on the internet. Okay, so it's a worldwide phenomenon. And if you just take a look at the rise of GPT, look at this from 22, all right, to of 23, just in a year, how you look at the number of applications, how they've gone. So it's over the top, right? And these are just statistics on Canadian statistics on a BDC survey. So you can see where where larger firms are in Canada versus smaller firms, and there's a lot of ways to go. So I won't go through these particular stats, but you can see that the adoption rates here are they're different. Older firms, they're not as fast as young firms. So the young firms coming in are higher in adoption. And those are kind of all the things that you should take a look at in terms of statistics of what's going on. All right. So here's just an opinion here from a business. We really had no choice but to change the way we did things as the industry evolves. There's no room for small business. Then don't adapt, right? So you've got to adapt, and it's coming. And small and medium enterprises here, SMEs, small and medium enterprises, there's still, these are the limits. There's some of them are still unfamiliar with the AI options, and some of these options are easy to adopt in today's world, whereas they thought they were just overwhelming at one point in time. Uncertainty about the AI tools that fit their business. I mean, there are organizations now that are out there to be able to help you adapt, going on, and then the top 10 challenges, lack of knowledge about the different options. Look at that. That's one of the highest challenge. And so these are the kind of things that this is there for your information to go through and understand, how important this is. But what I understand now is that, big data analytics is critical for success. And we're starting to see it in Canada. Already they're proposing a big data center in Olds, Alberta, and millions of dollars. And why? It's because things are going crazy in terms of the need to be able to house a lot of data for AI analysis. And look at this, the compound annual growth rate is 13%. I'm sure it's higher now in terms of it increasing in terms of big data and business analytics. So that's really key. But the main issue, human control, okay, specific tasks, transparency, those are the key issues. And understand that, you use AI as a tool, and as you start using AI as an agent, then AI can learn on its own and do some things on its own, and you don't have control over that. So you really got to understand, if your organization is going to go into a point where it's going to have a self-learning software that just starts doing things on their own, it may take the it may take the company in a bad place. All right, so just understand that. Okay, poor management decisions and the use of AI. Look at all the things: data privacy and security risks, bias, financial losses, decreased employee morale, customer dissatisfaction, regulatory noncompliance. And I think, and that's a weak spot right now in terms of government, regulatory conditions. They're not in place, and things are going to go a little bit sideways because of that. Operational inefficiencies, innovation stagnation. So, so here's the issues, when you're looking at AI as an agent, the bias, privacy and security, lack of transparency, ethical concerns. You could say, well, crazy example, well, maybe we should, you know, uh, stop, how do we stop, garbage from accumulating on the streets? Well, they might be, well, a real crazy example to solve that without any ethical concerns. So those are the kind of things that you got to worry about. Okay, not going to talk about that. Um, Okay, so the things that now we're getting into is that, in terms of the evolution of management principles, theories, and techniques, it's this disruptive AI technology that we really need to understand. So if you want more information, how about, like there's going to be a lot more data-driven decision making. There's going to be a lot more need for agility and flexibility, and then a lot more need for enhanced human AI collaboration. And that's where, the AI assistant, however that gets defined in the next 5 to 10 years, will have a big impact on how you do work. Okay. Ethical AI implementation, talent management, innovation, and creativity. So all these things that are going to come into play. So in conclusion, though, the managers will need to focus on ethical AI implementation. Workers have to prepare by embracing continuous learning, developing adaptability, and enhancing corporations. That statistic about 92 million jobs are going to disappear by 2030 and 170 million jobs are going to appear. Well, if you're not ready for it, well, then, you're going to be replaced by somebody who is. So now we start getting into, the data part. And the learning part of AI. So you should really kind of know, what NLP is all about, natural language processing, and it's a subfield of computer artificial intelligence and deep learning. So, these you can see that, there. I can see, in the next 10 years, call centers are going to disappear. I mean, it's all going to be driven by NLP because it's going to be so effective that it'll be like talking to a human, right? And so that NLP, it bridges the gap between human communication and computer understanding. And you look at various applications that will get enhanced: virtual assistants, translation services, sentiment analysis, customer support, ultimately making this technology more accessible and user friendly. So this is going to be a big area of what we need to do. And you can see, there's text mining going on and sentiment analysis that gets recorded and then processed into this NLP. And right. So when you're getting ready for AI, you got to learn the basics. You got to stay curious. You got to collaborate, especially with interdisciplinary teams, to gain diverse perspectives. And it's got to be ethics first. And that's where the new areas of management principles, you really need to center in on empathy and trust, right? Empathy and trust, those are going to be the key drivers to keep people engaged, keep people connected to what you're trying to do. Otherwise, they won't trust you, they won't work with you. All right. So what? Okay, those are the conversions. It's going to redefine the workplace. Data shows this was just I think a 2004. AI in many sectors of business have grown by 270% over the last 4 years. So it's becoming, just a big deal. So bosses may have years of experience, get this one, all right, under their belt, but that doesn't mean they're irreplaceable, all right? In fact, managers are some of the easiest people to replicate with AI. Isn't that scary? All right. And the thing is too, is that, it's getting more predictive, and it's going from predictive to prescriptive. It's going to be able to command people what they need to do in business. And oh, by the way, if you don't trust that AI, or if it hasn't been nurtured properly, it may lead you into some pretty bad mistakes. All right. So faster and more efficient than any human. Eh? But here we are with empathy. Right. So insight, understanding, active listening. Right. It's the heart of the modern business management. And you need to look at fostering a culture that values people, relationships, and understanding to be able to make this thing work. Right. So there's different ways, of influencing and those pieces. So that's one piece. So now we're into, 13A. So I think this is slide 79 now. So here's the important benefits of AI. So it tells you, better decision making, et cetera, industry specific improvements. And then these are the main areas in industry right now that are really pushing ahead, with the use of AI. So that might tell you something in terms of your career choice as well. And then so here's where, the little more detail on this particular place, right? So read those. And then AI at work, what are the applications, to be able to use? Now we get into, the next generation manager. So you treat intelligent machines as colleagues. So at some point in time, you're going to have an AI system, whether it's going to be, still part of your laptop or some little robot that follows you. You got to focus on judgment work, right? And that's why, I kept on harping about, critical thinking and strategic thinking, systems thinking. All those things come into play, right? And to be able to give you that right set of tools and capabilities, to be able to work to do judgment. And then you're going to be doing real work. More along policy, more around shaping, what AI needs to do, and then you need to collaborate across boundaries and need to work like a designer. All right, so that's the next generation manager. Now we'll get into systems. So just to know that they're out there and they're getting more and more complex. And my interface with that was in the early 2000s. TELUS went from a gazillion independent systems to SAP, and SAP integrated the financial, the process, and everything else. And it's no small feat. And to understand, which does what, right? So CRM, customer relationship management, and with AI that puts it on steroids, and it becomes more and more capable to create intimate relationships with your customers and knowing their needs before they do, right? ERP, the enterprise resource management, that's more like the SAPs and the Oracle systems and those kind of things. And then supply chain management is another one that's, it's really overtaking to improve, global supply chain management. And that's why we're going to talk about blockchain, right? And that's coming up. Okay, not going to cover these pieces too much. Okay, so here's a little more definitions around what CRM is and SCM and ERP. But here's one slide that I really want to kind of emphasize on. You can see where, in terms of gathering business intelligence, the first part was just collecting information, what's happening, now the next step is you're determining, why is it happening? What's going on? And then based on knowing, the relationships, the algorithms around that and why things are doing what they're doing, then all of a sudden now you can start predicting, what's likely to happen. And that's where you start, improving your forecasting, improving your worldview on what could happen in terms of trends. But what's going to really break through is this prescriptive thing, and that's where what organizations need to know, but what they should be doing, and then here's where AI is going to be most of a risk in terms of knowing if AI gives you the right answer or not, or if AI as an agent decides that maybe there's a way that maybe you're not crazy about, that it will force your organization to do what they need to do, because it can be pervasive and go into the systems and create things to get to their means, to satisfy their needs. So that's where you have to be, really careful about what's going on. Not going to talk about that, but data mining, that's where the true value comes, where you can pull things out of data that you didn't know actually existed, right? And so that it's about finding the right data sources, and then looking at bringing them into one big data warehouse, so that there aren't different sources and room for corruption across them. Then modeling what's going on, you model and you test it, and then you deploy those models. So that's how you find that information. ERP systems, that they brought about a big shift. This allows for real-time data sharing, and that's where, again, I'm going to talk about blockchain a little bit on supply management. So now every portion in that global supply management chain, every player knows exactly what's going on related to their perspective, real time. And so, there may be a shipping container that's refrigerated shipping container on a ship, and the refrigeration goes down. Immediately, there's a signal that goes out, and the people who own that container and the people that are rent that container, they all know about it, and things are going to happen, right? And then everything's streamlined and improved. And again, payments get made when they're need to be. On the handoffs are clean. There's a clear sense of transparency and accountability across the whole supply chain, and that's where ERP systems come into play. So talked about this now, supply chain management. End-to-end, better end-to-end quality, better end-to-end security, better handoffs, coordination, all the things that I mentioned. But what makes that possible is blockchain. And blockchain is encrypted, all right? So the actual information is encrypted, and then, the currency is cryptocurrency. So there's no room for any kind of fraud. There's no room for any kind of misrepresentation. No room, and then a lot less room for any kind of illegal things going on. And that's where we're at. And AI is just going to make this more and more effective as we go along. So you should understand what blockchain is. And one of the leaders is IBM. And if you want to know more about blockchain, go into that. And blockchain is just what it is that it's little blocks of ones and zeros that give you that information on everything that makes the supply chain work. So here it is: transactions requested. The block is represented, and then the block is sent to every node on the network, so everybody gets to see what's going on, and then you can see where you're at in terms of what's going on. Okay, so offers transparency, pinpoints a product's exact origin, automation of purchasing process, all those forms that have to get done to go through customs, that can get all handled through blockchain, right? So here's a little bit more about that. But now I think this is probably the last piece. It's about the Internet of Things. So what the Internet of Things is, it's the collective network of connected devices and the technology that facilitates the communication between the devices and the cloud, right? And that's coordinated or coordinated by AI. So I'll give an example. In today's world now, you don't just have agriculture, you have intelligent agriculture, right? So what'll happen is that there's sensors in the ground measuring the pH, measuring the soil temperature. There's sensors in the air measuring the wind, measuring the amount of humidity. All the things that are critical to the growing and like the seeding, the growing, and the recovery of the actual growth product, and then in the machinery of the farmer. So that's what the Internet of Things in one application is. It's all these sensors that are now, that's why we need the big data centers, all right? But here's the thing, is that over the last 12 months, this is new, I just found this, over the last 12 months, the Internet of Things in North America has shifted from steady growth to rapid acceleration, all right? So the amount of applications and development is doubling in short times, in months. And it's just, it's going, it's out of, it's just out of there. And then what IIoT is, and this is the industrial Internet of Things. So that's the one to really focus on. And that's where you see it in manufacturing and energy and utilities and healthcare, smart cities, transportation and logistics, right? You can see that, let's look at this one, smart meters, grid optimization, energy efficiency, all these things of, shifting loads if something goes down, and it's all done through sensors in the Internet of Things along with artificial intelligence. So, all these things are coming and you need to get ready for it. All right. I think this was, there's even, I found an example here for college students in a smart dorm room system. The system includes smart lighting, climate control, security features, all accessible through a smartphone app. I mean, that's what, the Internet of Things is all about, and here's, the value chain of how that all comes together. There's your device, and then there's the sensors, there's this communications hardware, all that connectivity, all the back end stuff, where AI manipulates that, and the software they're building the systems, right? So it's becoming a really big thing, right? And look at this, it's going to be up to 252 billion by 2030, and this was a 2024 forecast. All right, so it works in blockchain, so you got to know that. So how's that working? So, and I think that's all I'm going to cover with you guys. All right, so I think the lesson here is that don't underestimate, what AI is going to, how much of AI is going to have an impact on your personal life and on your business life, and get ready for it and be prepared. So I hope that I shared some of my experience with you. I hope that maybe I've inspired a couple of, thoughts in terms of what you should be doing. And again, if you ever need any kind of information about this stuff, don't hesitate to email me, and I'd be happy to accommodate you. So I'm going to, I'll be online on the time of the test. So if there's something that goes sideways, you can email me, and we'll go from there. Okay. Uh, any questions at all before I sign off? Okay, if that's the case, then I'm gonna shut down the recording and sign off. All right. It's a pleasure teaching you people.